Validate your mercies to me. Oh, you know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on my feet. You know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on your feet.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Loaded HQ, and we are back with another away days, and we're back, loaded are back after the madness of the transfer window in the 5-day bounce of the shows. We took a well-earned rest last week. Got our energy levels up, rejuvenated, and now we're back. And there's no better place to be back than away days when football returns on Tuesday. So we're absolutely buzzing about that, and we're going to get into that in a second. But as always, joined by the main man, Chris Hall. How you doing?
Good, mate. How are you doing?
Very well, mate. Very well. Really looking forward to football being back and seeing the boys in black and white again, and actually seeing a few new faces in the starting lineup, hopefully. So this man should, fingers crossed, be making his debut. If anyone's been living under a rock, you would know that he's arrived in Newcastle, trained with his teammates, and looking to be ready to start on Tuesday. So really, really happy about that. And I'm just going to refer to him from now on as BDB, Big Dan Burn, because obviously he's very popular with his name down in Brighton, and we'll continue that tradition. But great to see him, local Geordie lad, join Newcastle in a much needed centre-back position. And yeah, of course, we have a new left-back, Matty Targett. Joined the club as well on loan for Aston Villa. Really experienced, cultured left back. Really looking forward to seeing him play in the club. So we have a number of new players that are going to be back and wearing black and white on Tuesday. And you're going to be there, Chris. So you're going to the game. What are your thoughts coming into Tuesday?
Feeling confident, mate. I mean, I always do every time we play Everton, because the thought of losing to Everton's not good, especially from being around these ways. So I'm always feeling pretty confident going into the Everton game. Even more so now because we've had a pretty strong transfer window. I know at the end of the window we all felt a little bit gutted, didn't we, that it finished how it did, because obviously we were hoping to get Hugo Ekitike in, hoping to get Jesse Lingard in. It didn't quite happen, but as I said that on the day, we'd reflect a few days after and think, you know what, not a bad window. And then obviously Everton are now under a new era under Frank Lampard, so hopefully they don't hit the ground running too quick. I know they had a good win yesterday against Brentford. I took my lad and my brother-in-law to the match. I didn't go myself, obviously, but dropped them off at the ground, picked them up. So they were in high spirits last night, and by the sounds of it, had a pretty good performance. But yeah, I always like going to a Newcastle game, in an evening under the floodlights. It always has that special atmosphere about it. So, with Bruno making his debut and no doubt a couple of others too, I'm feeling confident, put it that way, Pete.
Yeah, definitely, and it's the only way we should feel. We wanted the owners to invest. They've done that. Nearly 100 million been spent on players, and so therefore, we should be confident going into every game now that we've got a much better team than what we had at January the 1st. But look, we're going to get into all of that, and in particular the Everton game. And as always with away days, there's no better way of previewing our next game without having the opposition voice. And we're delighted to have Mike join us from the Unholy Trinity podcast. Welcome in, Mike.
Evening, how are we doing?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Thanks for joining us for the Everton preview. Just tell us a little bit about your podcast first and foremost, because you've been doing it. I think before we went on air, you said you're coming up to your sort of 3-year anniversary. Is that right?
Yeah, 3 years. I've had about 25 managers in that time. It's been a revolving door since the relative quiet years of David Moyes, etc. But no, about 3 years ago, we kicked things off, and it's just gradually grown from there. Really enjoyed doing it, sort of once a week, sometimes twice, depends what's going on. Couple of spin-off podcasts as well, where we try and tackle issues within modern football, and it's just something that we enjoy doing, and it's allowed us to also do some good within the local community as well, and raise money and do things for the veterans that are linked to Everton in the community. So it's all important to the three of us, and as I say, it's a really enjoyable thing for us to do.
No, I agree, but it sounds fantastic as well. Always a good thing to be able to talk Everton, but from your club's point of view, but to do the extra little bits that you're doing as well, it just makes it all the more sweeter. But look, Everton have had a little bit of an up and down season, shall we say? Obviously, with the appointment of Rafa Benitez. Obviously, if a lot of fans didn't go down well, Rafa Benitez is gone now. Now Frank Lampard is in. What are your thoughts with regards to Frank Lampard being your new manager?
I mean, he's one of those names that wasn't really mentioned when Benitez was removed, and obviously the most notable name was Roberto Martinez. He was brought up, and a lot thought he was coming in on an interim basis. Big Dunk was mentioned, and then Lampard gradually snuck in. And I think what won him even more favour, everyone's seen obviously Vitor Pereira go on Sky Sports News a few days before his third or fourth interview, and it was just a crazy stunt. And even at that point, Everton fans weren't too happy with that name being mentioned for about the third time in the last 11 years with the Everton manager's job. He hasn't done a great deal. He's taken 1860 Munich down. He's been sacked by Fenerbahce twice. I don't see what his credentials would have been to get anywhere near the interview table. So he lost a lot of, or any supporters he might have had went straight away. And Lampard then at that point was one of the three names that was in the fold. So he topped that list, and rightly so. He's got experience at the top level as a manager. He did fairly well with both Chelsea and Derby. As a player, one of the best of his generation. For me, probably the best central midfielder of his generation. You talk about Scholes and Gerrard. Lampard's stats basically outweighed the two of them. Won it all, seen it all. So fantastic. It's going back to the Moyes days in a sense for me, for a younger manager, new fresh ideas, good coaching team behind him as well, which is just as important.
Yeah. And
someone who's got enthusiasm for the job, and like we saw yesterday, shows it on the sideline as well. It's really, really important. We've had Benitez. I know, you're potentially fans of his, and he did fairly well up at Newcastle. But in terms of his management style and how he carried himself, it was never ever going to be a good fit for me. We tried to back him, didn't work out. But to see Lampard dancing down the line yesterday was great to see. So yeah, I think it's a good appointment. And I think going forward, hopefully he's the manager to take us into our new stadium.
No, I have to agree with a lot of that. I mean, look, me and Chris can vouch for this as well. We talked about Rafa Benitez going to Everton in the summer when it happened, and we were both of the mindset that it wasn't the right fit at all. I mean, we did want him to kind of hold off because we felt that with the takeover potentially going through, that he would be the ones that the owners wanted, but it just didn't really ever look like a right fit. And I think right from the get-go, it was always going to be a case of, how long is it until he either gets sacked or he gets relieved at the end of the season. He was never going to see more than one season in at Everton. Without a doubt. But look, you've talked about Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard's come in, and you've talked about the credentials that he's got. There has been some question marks though about, he hasn't sort of yeah, in terms of his managerial career, he's still relatively young. He's still new in the game, and he hasn't kind of really proved himself. And that's coming from what I'm hearing from like a number of Everton fans. Do you share that mindset or that concern that he hasn't really had enough time in the game in order to really kind of, stamp his authority on Everton and take them where they want to go?
Yeah, of course, it's going to be a concern for some. I understand that. But like I said, I think when you've got a quality coaching team behind you who've done their job for many, many years. I mean, Paul Clements has been around the best. He was with Carlo Ancelotti at Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. He was a world-renowned assistant manager. He's come in as a coach. The two lads from Chelsea, Chris Jones and Joe Edwards, have come in. Joe Edwards as the assistant. Both have done their job for many, many years. They're trusted by the manager. Big Dunk, obviously, has been a coach for many years. Ashley Cole, we don't know what he's like as a coach, very, very new to the game. But you're looking to demand respect from the players, and I think all of those gentlemen who come into the club will demand instant respect. And the fact that Ashley Cole, Frank Lampard, obviously, Leighton Baines, who's in and around the first team fold as well, have only really recently finished playing football in the last, say, 5-6 years or so. That stands them in good stead as well with the players. It's about getting them on board. But I do take the point. Of course, it is important. He hasn't had a lot of managerial experience. But the important thing is, as I say, is who's behind him. But also, he has managed at the top of the game. Obviously, at Chelsea, he did well with them. Did well with Derby. And, he's going to be open. He's going to be open to various different changes, tactical changes, tweaks, and new ideas, and that's really important. He hasn't been sort of moulded or worn down by years and years and years of being a manager. Because I think with Benitez, he had a certain way of playing, and he very rarely sort of moved from that. And even if, we can see what the issues were, he was a very, very stubborn manager because maybe of his experience. Lampard, I think, is still to be moulded as a manager, and that for me is an exciting thing, to be honest.
I think that's a fair point. It's a fair assessment of that. Before I move on, Chris, from that point of view, from a Lampard sort of point of view and a Rafa point of view, actually, would you agree with sort of like Mike's assessment with regards to Frank Lampard?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always felt that Frank Lampard was harshly done by at Chelsea. I mean, I know a lot of people have said in the past that he didn't do a very good job at Chelsea and he kind of got thrown out on his ear and he spent loads of money, but I don't think he actually got long enough. I know, obviously, at Chelsea, it's big demands and, they want instant success, if you like. But I do think Tuchel was very fortunate to take over that team from Frank Lampard that he built in the summer. And as I say, I just felt like he needed more time. So I remember pre-takeover, when there was talks of Bruce going earlier than what he did. One of the names I threw in the hat was Frank Lampard. I would have been, reasonably happy. The one thing I would say though, and I think Mike's already kind of alluded to it, but I've been really surprised at how popular Frank Lampard's appointment's been with Everton fans. On Twitter and stuff, I've seen, people talking about him in a really good way. And like I say, it's not to put a negative thing on it, but it's almost feels like the same excitement as when Ancelotti came in. And I just wanted to know from Mike whether he thinks maybe the club have used that to their advantage. Obviously, these Pereira links came in, and like Mike, I was a bit like, where's this name come from? And surely he wouldn't be even within touching distance of the Everton job. But do you think, Mike, that the club have kind of used that as a bit of a tactical ploy so that when his name was linked and all the Everton fans were like, no, we don't want him. And then you got Lampard, who was top of the three. So it was Pereira, Ferguson and Lampard. Do you think that's been a tactic used by the club to try and, get the fans on side so that the fans have got what they want, if you like?
Would it surprise me? No. Mashiri has proven to be, with some of the things and decisions he's made over the years, it just wouldn't surprise me at all. I think it'd be quite clever if they did. And, I think, if they had gone out and gone, listen, we'll do this. We'll use Pereira as a pawn to get the fans on side more with Lampard. It's very, very clever, and that's off to them if they've done that. But I don't know. I think the thing with Pereira is he's linked to Kia Jirapchin, who, if he would have got the job, as manager, he would have got paid off. That man's only concerned about lining his pocket. So, with him advising Mashiri on many decisions within the club, has done for a number of years, has been involved with certain transfers, and he was trying to get Richarlison to PSG in the summer and trying to negotiate that fee.
Yeah,
I think it was, if they got the way, I think it would have been he would have been Everton manager. I think where it backfired and where there's a point of no return was that appointment, that interview on Sky Sports News. The same night then, obviously the fans had the protest in and around Goodison Park as well. Graffiti appeared on the wall. There was all of that. So I think that was the point of no return. And I think if they appointed him at that particular time, they look absolutely stupid, and it would have been a civil war around the streets of Liverpool for, I can almost guarantee that. And that sounds extreme, but the fans were ready to blow, and I mean, they were ready to blow. So they would have been ridiculously stupid to have brought him in. But if they've done it on purpose, and it's a real valid point, I take my hats off to them, to be honest with you, because I think it's quite clever. But Lampard was still the standout regardless. And as I say, it does go back to the David Moyes era, where you bring in a new manager in. David Moyes was a Preston at the time. He'd done obviously lower league management. Still, he was younger than Lampard. That was a gamble. We were in a really difficult position at the time in the league as well. He kept us up. So similar to that kind of situation. But like I say, I do think he's a good manager who, like you said, then was probably slightly harshly done to at Chelsea.
Fair assessment of that. And look, we've been busy as Newcastle fans. We've been busy during our January transfer window. We've brought 5 players in, as we talked about before. But Everton have done a little bit of business themselves in January, and you guys have had a few, moves around, players coming in, players coming out. Before we get onto the players coming in, what are your thoughts as an Everton fan around the whole situation with Luka Dean leaving the club to go to Aston Villa? Obviously, we were in with him. We were in and linked heavily with him as well early in January. But it was obvious that there was a disagreement. There was a fallout between Rafa Benitez and Luka Dean, which meant that Luka Dean left, but only for then, I think 2 days later, for Rafa Benitez to get sacked. Like, what are your thoughts about that whole situation? Because from the outside looking in, it did seem really strange that happened, and then they sacked Rafa Benitez just a couple of days later.
Yeah, ridiculous situation, really. Even if Luka Dean was in the wrong, if you want to argue he was in the wrong, he was very public in terms of on the training field with his distaste of what was going on. He wasn't happy with what he was being asked to do. We all know he's an attacking fullback, and he plays his best football in that sort of final third, making things happen. He's proven it already at Aston Villa. He's been given a license by Steven Gerrard to play further forward. Obviously, he got an assist to Goodison Park. But I've seen him in and around the box more in the last or in the first few games for Villa than I've seen all season for Everton. So that was his game, and there should never be an issue with players having a conversation with managers and saying, "Listen, I don't agree with that. I believe I'm better served playing this way or playing further up." There should be no issue with that. I think the disappointing thing of it all was that it got out into the public domain. It was in the Athletic. And that was really disappointing for it to get to that point, because if it's dealt with in-house, we wouldn't even know about it, and you wouldn't think anything more of it. And I think it showed a lot about the manager in terms of how stubborn he is, how I think that he always thinks that he's right. If you look at where he's been in his career, but he says he always falls out with people all the time. I think at Newcastle he won more favour with the fans because he wouldn't have any of Mike Ashley's fun and games, and he was quite happy to say about it as well. So he won loads of favour with you. You loved him for it. Whereas with Everton, what it served to do is you pushed out one of our best players, someone who we thought really highly of. So straight away, you already came in with a mountain of abuse and an uphill struggle to get the fans on side. Well, you didn't do yourself any favours by doing that. So really disappointing. It shouldn't have been handled the way that it was handled. And I'm not saying Luka Dean wasn't wrong in certain aspects. I think that he was, in terms of things that I've heard. But you know, it's one of those situations where it should have been handled better. But I mean, you can argue that at the end of the day, we've got in, you know, a decent transfer fee. We've been able to put it back into the playing squad, and we brought in 5 players over the course of this transfer window. Obviously, a left back came in. It's unfortunate for Mykolenko that he's got to learn on the job now, as opposed to learning from Luka Dean, because Luka Dean probably would have gone in the summer, and understandably so. He's on a long-term contract. The World Cup was coming up in the winter. I'd have no issue, because football's a business. You've got to bring players in, you know, make sure that they develop and make a profit. That's no problem at all. But I think he was sold 6 months too early. We were put in a predicament, and you've got a new lad who's coming now, who, you know, he hasn't got that left back to learn from, and he's not going to be the level of Luka Dean. He's a totally different kind of player. So wasn't great, and as I say, more for the point it was in the public domain.
Interesting, very, very interesting. I remember, I think we had a conversation, Chris, in our loaded chat when that happened. When the Luka Dean deal went through, and then when Rafa Benitez got sacked, because I think you called it quicker than I did. I think you were the first one to say he's not making it past this game. But then the surprise that he got sacked, and then looking at the situation with Luka Dean then playing at Aston Villa, it was a strange situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did. I felt sorry actually for Everton fans in that circumstance, because Luka Dean, I knew how much the Everton fans love Luka Dean. Obviously, you know, I speak to my mates quite often, and they absolutely adore him. And judging from his closing statement, or his you know, the little briefing that he did when he left, you could see he really didn't want to go. So that must have been a real big frustration. But yeah, the way, I agree with Mike, the way it was all played out, it wasn't very good, and I don't think it left Rafa in a very good light. And we know Mike's right when he says that, you know, Rafa Benitez tends to always go against the owners. I think he did it at Valencia, did it at Liverpool, he did it at Newcastle, but because it kind of fitted the agenda at Newcastle, we didn't really notice, because we all hated Mike Ashley anyway, so we were quite happy with it. Whereas, you know, if he got the job now, Pete, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? You know, if Rafa Benitez came in under these new owners and then started, you know, playing off against the owners, would we feel the same way that Mike and the Everton fans did? You know, we would, maybe we'd be getting frustrated with him.
Well, you know my thoughts on Rafa Benitez. Don't want him anywhere near Newcastle.
Yeah, you weren't a fan, were you, mate?
No. As soon as he look, before he took the Everton job, that he was the guy that I wanted. That I think every Newcastle fan wanted as their first choice to come in and manage the club. But and I keep going back to that point, and I've raised it so many times. A good friend of the channel, Liam Kennedy, Newcastle World journalist, said quite early on in 2000, when he was initially linked with Newcastle, when he left his job in China, that he doesn't like to sit around not taking a job. He rushes himself back into a job, so he'll take the first job that comes available to him. And I always remember him saying that. I think it was like February last year that he said it. And as soon as the links came with Everton, I knew he was going to take it. And even though it wasn't the right decision, I mean, when he was linked with Everton, it was like the first thing everyone was talking about was the fact that he's not right for the job, not, oh, he's going to be great at this or that and he's going to change Everton. So there was already a negative spin on it. But the fact that he took it, for me, that was it. The Rafa kind of journey and wanting Rafa back was gone for me. And like I say, we've had some fans talk about him coming back as director of football. No chance. I don't want him anywhere near the club, to be honest. I think what you're seeing now is a decline in his powers, and he'll probably go back into Europe and manage somewhere and try and rebuild them elsewhere. But I think he's kind of, without sounding too harsh, I think he's probably a little bit of a spent force in the Premier League as a Premier League manager now, to be honest. But hey, we all move on. Frank Lampard's the manager of Everton, and I'm sure he will do a fantastic job after Tuesday night. And we've got, look, I'm very happy with Eddie Howe. I really like him as our manager of Newcastle, and I think he'll do a great job at Newcastle for the time that he's with us. But look, I'm going to get. I know you're on the bottom, Chris, with questions, but there's one question that I do want to ask you that's come in.
You're going to ask that one.
when I did have a little chuckle when it came on the screen because I knew Mark was up to something. Sorry, Mike. Martin is one of the loaded lads. He's one of the team. So when that question popped up from him, I knew I was going to ask that question first. But I'm going to ask it to you, Chris. So how long have you been an Everton fan now?
Do you know what? I always get asked this question, and all me mates, you know, we were Reds, they always go, "You like Everton, don't you? Support Everton?" And it's only because over the years I've probably been more favourable towards Everton. But what I found really interesting, Mike, and you'll probably be able to back this up, like the hatred's maybe a strong word, I don't know, but the dislike of Newcastle from Everton fans has certainly increased of late, and that's probably down to Rafa Benitez. It's probably down to Jordan Pickford. But a lot of my blue mates, including Richie, who we were talking about pre-show, Mike, he's not a big fan of the barcodes or whatever he wants to call us. But yeah, it's interesting because now I'd say we probably get a bit of an easier ride off Liverpool fans rather than Everton fans. So I'm definitely not an Everton fan. And any of my red mates watching this, you know, if you can keep hold of that.
Cheers for that, Mark. Always good to get those questions.
I liked what he said after that as well, Pete. See what he wrote there.
And to be fair, you nailed it. You've nailed it down to a T, mate. But always good to get those. Look, some fantastic questions in there. I know.
Yeah,
Chris
there is.
And we're going to get to those questions because there's a number of them aimed towards yourself, Mike. So we'll ask you some of those questions in a bit. But we were talking about transfers. Obviously, we talked about Luka Dean as the one going out for Everton. But you've had a few players come in. Quite noticeably, you were very, very busy on deadline day. So they're the kind of the two main sort of talking points, really. Firstly, you went out and got on loan Donny van der Beek from Manchester United on loan for the rest of the season. Am I right in thinking, Mike, that there's no obligation or offer to buy him permanently? It's just a straight loan and that's it?
Straight loan, yeah. United wouldn't put one in there. So they've obviously seen there is some kind of future for him. I think Everton we're pretty keen to get one in there. We know, the age of him, was he 24? I think he's a talented kid. Just needs to play regular football. It's as simple as that. So we got a good signing, really good signing. I'm interested to see where Lampard's going to play him, because you look at what we've got at the moment in terms of our attacking options, because historically he does play a little bit further forward, but it was I think Ronald was saying that he can play a bit deeper as a number 6. So whether he's asked to do that role, who knows? But we've got a lot of attacking options at this moment in time, in and around our striker, which is where Van der Beek would like to probably be. But so would Dele Alli, so would Richarlison, Damari Gray, Andros Townsend, Anthony Gordon. They're all in and around that area. So there's a lot of options, but exciting sign. I think he'll do a good job because he's going to get some regular game time. Definitely.
Look, we tried for him about a week and a half before the end of the window, and I think we were told, obviously with the opposition actually being in the bottom 3, I think we were told by sort of his representatives that he wasn't sort of interested in the move, which is fair enough. But he's a talented boy that just needs regular game time. But you've gone on to an interesting point, really. Actually, before I get Chris's opinion on both of the on both of those two particular signings that I'm focusing on, is that you've talked about, Donny van der Beek, traditionally a number 10, but couldn't sometimes play in that number 6 position. And obviously that made it even more kind of an interesting point for me when you sign this man, Dele Alli, or Dele as he likes to be referred to, in that, he is traditionally a number 10, and you've just talked about, Mike, all of those attacking options that you already have available to you. Is it going to be hard for Frank Lampard to be able to fit all of those attacking players into one team? Because, like you say, Donny van der Beek and Dele Alli can play in that sort of number 10 position. You've got your wide players, like you've already mentioned as well. Is it going to be hard to fit that all in?
Of course it is. Yeah, I was surprised when the links started to catch fire with Dele Alli. He was one of those very, very talented footballer. On on his day, he's absolutely fantastic. Again, another player who's just drifted, I think, because of whether it was attitude, which then led to lack of game time. But he's a very, very talented individual, only 25 years of age. You know, he used to be in England regular only a few years ago. Regularly, we're getting 30 goal involvements each season, you know. So it's a talented lad, and I question where we're going to put these players. I mean, he's obviously got a 2.5-year deal, so slightly different to Van der Beek there in terms of that. So we've got a bit more of a longer term future and plan for him. Obviously, the summer, I think we'll probably see one big move out of the club. I think whether it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whether it's Richarlison, one of those two, I think will go, which will obviously free up funds and then free up positions and things like that. So I don't know how he's going to do it in the shorter term. I really don't. I don't envy him. But this is the game that we're in, and we've been crying out for a little bit of squad depth for quite a while, because when we get sort of past our starting 11, maybe 12 or 13 players, we struggle massively with quality, and that's when we tend to drop off. So yeah, I don't know how he's going to do it, because what we played against Brentford yesterday, we had a midfield two of Alan and Andre Gomez, and then obviously we had the wing backs, if you like, with Coleman and Mikalenko, and then the front three, so Richarlison, Gordon, and Gray. So where he fits into that, I don't know. But I think Lampard does prefer a 4-3-3, if you like. So he go forward. I think he'll look at that. Have two maybe deeper lying midfielders, and then put Dele at the front of that three. But then, as I say, where do you then put Van der Beek? Where does Decore go when he's back fit? Where does Alan go? Where does Gomez go? But all about options, isn't it? That's the name of the game.
Did you just mention a second ago? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you mentioned Richarlison and potentially him going in the summer. Is that something that's talked about then? Is there a potential for him to leave in the summer?
They decided to move him on last summer, and that was because of Keir's action, trying to get a move to PSG. Obviously, he would have got some money out of the deal, I'm sure. But you've got to, obviously, you know yourselves, you've got to look at your assets, and if you want to be able to sort of make money or break even, you know, we've got awful finances at this moment in time. You know, we're on a knife edge in terms of the profits and sustainability rules of the Premier League. You've got to look to move players on, and we know he's one of the players. Him, Calvert-Lewin, Pickford. You know, you'd make a profit on tomorrow. So I think him and Calvert-Lewin will be the two. I mean, Calvert-Lewin's been linked to Arsenal quite heavily over the last few weeks, and there was a link in the summer as well. So one of those two will definitely go. Richarlison wants Champions League football, and understandably so. You know, he's been great for us, but we've got to be open to moving players on, reinvesting the money, and getting in 2 or 3 to improve the squad medium and long term. That's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. It's interesting though, because obviously, you know, for me, you know, Richarlison in particular, for me, he always seems to be the main man, the main guy. Whenever I watch Everton play, and with Everton, you know, he seems to be the catalyst that gets things going. Calvert-Lewin tends to get the praise because he scores the goals, but in terms of that real injection of quality in attacking areas, he seems to be the main guy. But I think you made a good point. You know, sometimes you do have to turn over your players, even your better players, in order to kind of evolve as a club. And obviously, with your financial situation, I think you've spent nearly half a billion £1 in recent years, and obviously that will always come back to kind of haunt the team, particularly if they've not progressed up in the way in which they wanted to. So no, it's a fair point. But look, from your perspective, Chris, you know, seeing Dele and Van der Beek, you know, putting on the Everton shirt, what were your thoughts about that? I think I might know the answer to one of the questions, but what do you think about those two signings for Everton in general?
Do you know what? Like you, Pete, I was kind of when I seen Van der Beek come in and Ali or Dele, my first thought was, you know, obviously I look at Everton's midfield and I know, you know, they've got Decore, they've got Allen, and then like you, I was thinking, well, who are they going to drop? I know obviously they've missed Calvert-Lewin for quite a lot of the season, and he's really important to them. And I've got a question for Mike on Calvert-Lewin actually, but I'll ask him that in a minute. But yeah, I when we got linked with Delhi towards the end of the window, I was hoping that we'd come in and nick him. As you know, Pete, when we were linked with Lingard and Delhi, I wanted Lingard over Delhi, but when I knew that was no longer a possibility, I'd hoped that we'd bring him in, because he is a risk, and but as Mike's already said, he's a player who, if you can kind of unlock that talent again, they're going to have some player on their hands. And maybe it is just the fact that he needs a new start, he needs a new voice. Because my concern when we were first linked with him, Mike, was, obviously under Poch, he fell out of favour. Then there was Mourinho, and he fell out of favour. Then there was Nuno, and now there's Conte. And for me, that worried me a little bit, the fact that 4 managers all kind of had the same opinion of him. And that's not to say he can't turn that round, but that was my initial concern. But then on the other hand, like you say, when you look at the stats and when you look at the career he's had at such a young age, and, the accolades he's received and stuff, when there's a player in there, it always gives you that little bit of hope. And I suppose it's a little bit similar with Van der Beek, although with him, he had a really good career at Ajax. And then Man United bought him for a lot of money. I think it was around the 40 million mark. But with him, I just don't think he's been given the opportunity. But if I think he plays week in, week out, I think he will showcase his talent, so to speak. So I think he's probably less of a risk than Delhi. But I wanted to ask you, Mike, as well, and obviously please feel free to comment on what I've just said. But I wanted to ask you about Calvert-Lewin, because he was linked, wasn't he, with I think it was around 60 million move to Arsenal. And I just wanted to know your thoughts. If you were to recoup 60 million for him, would you be happy with that? I mean, from my point of view, obviously I watch a lot of Everton, nowhere near as much as yourself, but I always get the impression with Calvert-Lewin that he's quite hyped up. I don't think he's much of an all-round striker. I think he's a good poacher. And I know when Ancelotti was at Everton, he was very much like, don't be taking 2 or 3 touches, just hit it. And he was doing really well under Ancelotti. But would you like to see a more complete striker there, or would you want to keep hold of him, or do you think 60 million would be a fair price?
Calvert-Lewin has come on in leaps and bounds. Bear in mind, he used to be a central midfielder. That was his position. He was then moved to be a striker. And it took for Carlo Ancelotti to sort of take him to one side. And like you say, he used to always go chasing down the channels all the time. He was nowhere near the middle of the pitch, nowhere near the area. And he's going, you play in this area. And like you say, try and get the shot off early, try and get in and around the 6-yard box. And he became that poacher because he was getting good service, and so he started banging the goals in. I think he stagnated because of injuries is really unfortunate. I thought that he should have been given more opportunities in the European Championships. I thought not using him, Southgate, I thought was absolutely pathetic, because at times he needed to come in and needed the goal, and he's sitting there doing nothing. I think he's better than people think he is. To be fair, he's a big, strong lad. He's got a fantastic leap. He's great in the air. And he's now becoming an all-round striker. This season's been really frustrating because of the fact he's been injured for so long. He came back obviously against Brighton, missed the penalty, and then we've not really seen him. He's had a couple of little niggles, to be expected. Totally understand. It's going to happen after being out for 4 months. I do understand that. But 60 million in the current market, I'm looking to go a little bit higher. I think even though the prices have sort of frozen or dropping a touch, I'd say, post-COVID, I think I'd be looking to get more for him. If he gets back and starts scoring again, he'll go for more than 60, in my opinion. It might involve, obviously, little bits of, add-ons and things like that. But I think if you look at what some of the prices are for certain players who are not near his level, then I'll be looking for more. I think we appreciate him more because of how he's developed over the years, because he's gone from this skinny lad who was offering very, very little, and he's grown to be a man, to be a good striker. And, he's got his best years ahead of him as well. You've got to look at his age. He's England international. They all come at a premium. So I think I'd be looking for more than 60 million, to be honest.
Nice. I'm just appreciating Ian in the chat. He's got a thing about footballers in their haircuts. So when I put Dele Alli's picture on, he put on there, "I rest my case." And then when I put on the picture with regards to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he's got pineapple on his head. So he's got a thing about footballers' haircuts that just made me chuckle a little bit. But talk about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think me and Chris are definitely in sync tonight, because that was actually going to be the next question I asked you.
Sorry.
No. I'm glad you asked it, because I think it's an interesting point of discussion, because, and it was interesting, obviously, your thoughts about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and you obviously watching Mike a lot more than I do, but I've never really seen what other people do in Dominic Calvert-Lewin. That's just my personal opinion. I think he does well in patches, in my opinion, but I just think consistency is a big problem with Dominic Calvert-Lewin that would separate him into the in my opinion, the top level striker. I think he's still got room to grow. He's still a relatively decent age, but I don't know. I don't know what you think, Chris. I've never really kind of seen or like kind of gone with the expectations. So, for example, when he was picked for England, I was actually quite surprised. I was actually quite surprised he got picked for England, because I didn't think he was at that level. But Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, again, to talk about my mate Richie, he's a big fan of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and obviously, season ticket holder. He goes every week, and knows his football. So I do trust his opinion. He always defends Calvert-Lewin and says, how much he rates him. And funnily enough, me dad mates, they all say what we say. They just don't see it. But maybe he's one of those players where you've got to kind of watch him week in, week out to really appreciate what he does. And Mike's right, when he says there's a lot of room to develop. And obviously Gareth Southgate, he's got a lot of strikers to choose from in the England setup. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin is always firmly in his thoughts, isn't he? Which I'm sure is no coincidence. So, I mean, me personally, I if we were linked with him, certainly for the 60 million or upwards, as Mike suggested, I wouldn't personally be going for him at that. But again, it's horses for courses, isn't it? And like I say, it could be one of those players where all of a sudden he'll just kick off, and maybe Frank Lampard coming in, if he starts to play to his strengths, a bit like Ancelotti did when Calvert-Lewin was playing under Ancelotti, and he starts scoring goals regularly. Maybe we'll start to see that consistency that you were talking about, Pete, because I know you mentioned that for you he plays quite a lot in patches, but maybe he just needs that run of games. And obviously, as Mike said already, he's had some pretty bad injuries of late, and his season's not really started, has it, this season? And is he going to be playing on Tuesday, Mike?
Yeah, touch and go. The thinking behind it was that he should have a couple of days, 2 or 3 days training under his belt before Tuesday. He wasn't spotted at the back end of last week and any kind of training footage at all. So possibly not. I'd probably say if he's anywhere near, he'll be on the bench, and the Charleston will start essentially.
Yeah, I actually saw an interview with Lampard this morning, in fact, and it said that Dominic Calvert-Lewin had only just started individual training, so not team training. I think it was on Friday morning, so that he was hoping that, as you just said, Matt, those extra days would mean that he would be available in some capacity. But I think from what Lampard was saying, he thinks at the most it would probably be from the bench, and he'd try and come on and impact the game sort of later on, which is fair enough. Interesting kind of discussion there around Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because he has been a bit of a talking point in the last couple of weeks. So it should be interesting to see how that kind of transpires in the game on Tuesday. But Chris, there's a few questions that people have been hitting at us during the show so far. Are there any questions you want to throw out there to Mike?
Yeah. There has been some really good ones. A few of them I wanted to ask myself actually. So yeah, we must be in sync. Me and the viewers tonight. Okay, so the first one's from David Shepherd, and David asks, "Does Mike think both new signings will play on Tuesday? Ali's been out on the sidelines for some time, and VDB he thinks will start. What do you think, Mike?"
Both have been short of game time, to be honest. Both of them have, Delhi played in the cup for Spurs. Obviously, he was cup tied a few weeks ago, but he's been devoid of any or much competitive action at all. So yeah, I can't see both of them start. And I think Alan and Gomez will be unfortunate to lose the place. I think Alan's more likely to get the nod over Andre Gomez, who was exceptional against Brentford yesterday. So yeah, Van der Beek maybe he comes in. I think I'd probably agree. He's got more chance of starting over Delhi. But this is the kind of problem that we've created, and it's nice to have. But it all depends how the players have recovered. It's quite a short turnaround from Saturday to Tuesday. So with any kind of doubts with any one of those two central midfielders, then the manager will have no problem in just changing things around a little bit. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. Okay, we got the next question from Geordie Tune for Life, and this is a player I'm a big fan of, by the way, Mike. I always sing his praises, and do you know what? I'm going to ask you a question after this because I've been dying to ask you this question for Mike. With Godfrey ruled out and a new left back, do you think this is Everton's weakest part of the team?
I wouldn't go as far as that. I mean, it's difficult, as I said earlier on, for Mykolenko because he's coming in from a league that's nowhere near as competitive. Okay, he's a full Ukrainian international. He's not Lucas Dean at all. Just doesn't play the same kind of way. He was much better, I thought, yesterday. He's starting to settle down and get used to obviously the speed of football in this country. Is it the weakest? Potentially, it all depends. I mean, the weakest part of our game under Benitez was the central midfield. Now, yesterday, the strongest part of our game was the central midfield. So it's all about how you can play the same tactics in terms of the same formation, but it's all in the application, isn't it? And that's the difference, really. And Lampard asks us now to keep hold of the ball. If it passes on to the middle from centre half to centre mid, then play it. Even if it's difficult, play it. Get used to the ball at your feet. Be comfortable. So I'd probably argue, you can look at right back. Seamus Coleman has been a fantastic servant for Everton Football Club. He's probably stayed on a little bit too long through no fault of his own. That's down to the club's poor recruitment and not addressing the issue of not having a right back coming through. Nathan Patterson obviously has been brought in, which is fantastic. Young lad from Rangers. Yeah. I think people are getting carried away if they think that he's the finished article. He can just come in and he ended up perform like a prime Cafu, because he won't. He's a young raw kid. He's got bags of ability. He's got bags of pace. He's full of confidence in his own ability. From what I've seen of him, even playing for the 23s, he was lively against Spurs last week. But he's got a lot to learn in the game. But I think both right and left back potentially are issues. The one player that I certainly fear is St. Maximin. He can do a variety of things. He's a very, very talented footballer, very, very quick. And obviously, Ben Godfrey mentioned there, if Ben Godfrey was playing, I'd feel much more comfortable because he's probably quicker. He's absolutely rapid. I'd fancy Ben Godfrey against anyone in the Premier League, to be honest. So that concerns me a little bit with the lack of pace we've got from both Seamus Coleman and Mykolenko. So I think, if Newcastle want to try and take advantage somewhere, it would certainly be out wide if we go in with that same formation we played against Brentford yesterday.
Yeah, we like to play our football on the width with St. Maximin and Ryan Fraser for sure. So I imagine it'll be something similar again. But I mean, look, you've obviously Ben Godfrey. I think he came off after about 14 minutes, wasn't it? I'm not sure what the injury was, but it must look like he's ruled out for the game on Tuesday. Would you say?
I'd say he's out for the season, to be honest. Hamstring. Yeah, hamstring's done by all accounts. He's got scans over the next couple of days, but it doesn't look good. So I think that could be his season. Could be his season done. Similar to Tom Davis, he did his hamstring and he's had to have an operation and he's out for the season. He's not been named in the 25-man squad list. So I think. Godfrey's race could be run for this season, unfortunately.
Wow, I didn't realise it was that bad. And yeah, just before we move on to the next question, talking about sort of other injuries. Obviously, this man, Decore, who was for me, he's a big player for you. I really like him. If I'm honest, I was kind of gutted when he came to Everton, because he's a player I would have loved in our midfield. But he picked up a groin injury in the last Premier League game, if I'm right in thinking, and it's looking like he is likely to miss the game. Is that the case as well, Mike?
Yeah, he's out for about another 3 weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks. So I can't see us seeing Decore back. Mind you, he does seem to recover from things very, very quickly. He broke his foot and was back in about sort of 3 weeks. It was just ridiculous. So he does have decent powers of recovery for someone who has knee issues and doesn't take part in full training most of the time. So it's incredible. But on a Saturday, he's always one of our better players. But he struggled this season. You know, he had niggles last season as well. He struggled with a few little injuries this season. So I don't think he's going to be anywhere near the squad come Tuesday night. No.
Yeah, interesting. Any other injury concerns that we're not talked about? So obviously talked about, Ben Godfrey, Decore. Anyone else that you're unsure about that will make it? Obviously Tom Davis as well. You've talked about as well.
No, not that I can think off the top of my head. I mean, times, in the current times, things are always so uncertain. So someone could come down with COVID tonight, tomorrow, and then they're out of the squad, aren't they? So you just never know who's going to appear at any given time. But not that I know of, not heard anything. As I say, I think we'll hear more probably tomorrow when they've done a recovery session and the back of Finch Farm, and obviously they're being assessed for the game on Tuesday. But I'd fully expect a squad that was available against Brentford, all of those players bar Ben Godfrey should be fit. But then we've got the new lads to throw in, including obviously El Ghazi will be back in the squad. No doubt he seems to be fit and ready to go. So we should have a stronger squad than what we had against Brentford, that's for sure.
Interesting. Any more, Chris?
Yeah. Just before I move on to the next one, I just want to ask Mike about Ben Godfrey. Now, I know I mentioned that I'm a big fan of Godfrey, but I wanted to ask you: do you think, Mike, that because Ben Godfrey can be utilised in so many different positions, do you think that's a concern? Because I know that Ben Godfrey's played left back for you quite often. I know he's naturally a centre back, and I'm pretty sure he's played right back on occasion. Do you think that could hold him back a bit? Because sometimes, certainly from the outside looking in, I often think to myself, like, for me, I think he's probably one of your better centre-backs. And I think rather than putting him out, on either side or predominantly the left, would it not be better to just have him in the centre and just play him week in, week out so that he can build? Because I know sometimes on Match of the Day and things like that, he's been torn apart by panellists and stuff, but I always think it's probably not easy for him, though, because he's constantly either playing in a different position or he's playing with a new partner. I know, like, you rotate the likes of Holgate and Keane and Yerry Mina. Do you think that could potentially hold him back a bit?
Yeah, I mean, he's a centre half, isn't he? That's what he was brought in to be. It's unfortunate for him that in his time at the club, we've had quite a few injuries to both Luca Dean last season, Seamus Coleman as well last season. Luca Dean out of favour this season. So he's been asked to play left and right back more often than not. He's had a handful of games, probably less than 10 games as a centre half. Long term, he's going to be our centre half. Him and another. I think Michael Keane might move on in the summer. Yerry Mina, as good as he is, he's always injured. So it's he's probably our best centre half, to be honest with you. But if you can't rely on him to play 25, 30 games a season, which we can't, then it's a waste of time. So I think he could be moved on as well. But Godfrey's future is at centre half. Like you say, because he spends so much time away from the middle of that defence, he's not learning his trade.
Yeah.
And he does a decent job as a left or right back or wing back, whatever it might be. But it is unfair on him. So then when he does come into the middle, to expect him to be this Rolls Royce centre half, which he's got all the attributes in the world. He can carry the ball. He's big. He's strong, powerful. He's comfortable with the ball at his feet. He can break through into the midfield. But he's not going to do it on a consistent basis if he's not playing there on a consistent basis. And that's the issue. So going forward, hopefully when he gets back sooner rather than later, that will be where the manager sees his future, because, like you say, he needs to start, I think, nailing down that spot and specialising as a centre half.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Mike. We've had a question from Martin, who's part of our show, Martin Lesbit, and he's asked. I know you've already touched on this slightly, Mike, but you personally, what's your view on Dele Alli? I know me and Pete have told you, our thoughts, and we were hoping to nick him off you on the last day of the window. But what are your overall thoughts on Dele Alli?
I've always liked him. Even when he's been out of favour and he's getting bits and pieces here and there in cup games and all that. For me, he always does a job. He played against Liverpool a few weeks ago for Spurs, and I thought he was fantastic. He's got that ability. The confidence that he has as a young footballer. I think he reminds me of Ross Barkley in the sense of that Ross Barkley always needed to be told he was fantastic and loved an arm around his shoulder. Martinez was the ideal manager for Ross Barkley because he'd say he was phenomenal every single time he played, whether he was good or not. And Ross Barkley loved it, and he got the best out of him. Once we went from Martinez to Ronald Koeman, it's night and day. 2 different managers, 2 different styles. Ross Barkley fell off a cliff, and that was the end of him. And I think Dele Alli played his best football under Pochettino. I think he put his arm around him quite often. He was given the freedom to express himself. When you then put him in there with as Jose Mourinho, for example, and even Conte, that type of manager, who aren't going to take any kind of messing or nonsense, or aren't going to bow down to you and give you a cuddle and say it's all going to be okay. Dele, he struggled and fell out of favour, didn't get much game time. And I think being at Spurs for so many years also hasn't helped. He's become stagnant, and he's been unable to find a way out of the poor form that he's in. And it's probably played into his attitude as well. If he's not playing football, I think someone said to me the other day he's into playing online games apparently, and someone was saying that had taken over his life a little bit. So he was probably a little bit more concerned with who he was playing online and who he was playing on the Saturday for Spurs, to be honest. But I do, his attitude is a bit of a puzzle. But I think getting away from London, getting him to a club that wants him, that will he'll play the majority of the time with a manager who's got great respect for him. A manager who he grew up watching and learning his trade off as well. I think it's a good fit, and that's really important. So I'm excited to see what he can do, because for me, he goes into that Everton squad as probably one of the best footballers in there, because I think he's an exceptional talent. We just need Frank Lampard to unlock it again.
Yeah. We're on our fully loaded transfer show that we had weekly. One of the points that I raised for discussion was the difference between the likes of Lingard and Dele Alli in Delhi at the time. And if you look at his career, bearing in mind he's got, Jesse Lingard's got 6-7 years on him in terms of playing professional football. Dele Alli's record is better. His career stats are better than Jesse Lingard. Now, if you think Jesse Lingard is played for Man United for quite a long time now, and his stats are already better, and he's only 25 years old. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Mike. You just need someone to get an arm around him, to know that he's going to play every week. I think is a big key, and I think that was a big factor in him moving to Everton, is being told that not only that you're the man, but you're going to play every week to show me what you're about. And I think you'll see, providing that it works with Frank Lampard at the club, I think you'll see the best of him. It'd be interesting to see where he fits in and who actually comes out of the team to allow Dele Alli to play. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Van der Beek as well, because if you're right in saying that Van der Beek will play in that number 6, normally that's been occupied with both Allen and Decore. So who comes out of there? Andre Gomez played for you on Saturday. He doesn't always play, and he seemed to be playing better. So, you've got a lot of options in there. And it's a case of who's going to be the ones to come out and who are going to be the ones to come in. Really, really interesting. But look, we'll come back to that, because it's an interesting talking point, and I know there's other questions out there that we'll come back to as well. But look, as we're thinking about the game now, and we're thinking about what's going to happen on Tuesday, there is no better way in talking about the game on Tuesday without having a little bit of stats. And for any of the regular viewers, you'll know what this means.
Evening, lads.
As if by magic, he is here. Welcome back, Keith.
Evening, Keith.
Man, Keith, how are you doing?
Not so bad. How are you keeping yourself, Pete and Chris? And nice to meet you, Mike. Hope you're well.
And you, Keith, hope you're well, mate. Yeah, all good here. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. We're good here. Glad to be back talking about football. Glad that football's going to be back on Tuesday. Really looking forward to it. With all the new signings and look, there's no better way of previewing the game and looking at the game ahead without looking at a few stats. And you are the main man to give us those stats. So, Keith, what have you got for us this week? Fingers crossed they're positive.
There's some positives in there, Pete. Newcastle's overall record against Everton, slightly in favour of Everton, it has to be said. So this is the full time. Newcastle have won 68. They've drawn 36 and they've lost 74. So slightly better record there for Everton over Newcastle. But Newcastle's record at St James's Park in the last 50 games they've played Everton at St James's, they've won 23, drawn 10 and lost 17. So slightly better records for Newcastle and at St James's, and at Goodison Park in the last 50 games, Newcastle have won 10, drawn 13 and lost 27. So we can see there that Everton have got a much better record at Goodison there. But what I noticed in particular, you guys probably picked up on it as well, is in the last few years, since Newcastle have played Everton, they've only won 3 of 10. But what I think as well is important here is so those in the last couple of seasons, Newcastle seem to be getting their form against Everton again. I think they've won sort of like 3 out of the last 4 in the Premier League. So there is a slight improvement there, and we'll all remember the last time Newcastle played Everton was a fantastic win at Goodison with Callum Wilson getting the goals there, and it was brilliant. Looking at Chris Wood's record, goal scoring records, because we all hope he's going to score soon. It's 3 and 10 against Everton. Eddie Howe's managerial record against Everton. He's managed 11 games, he's won 4 and he's drawn 2 and he's lost 5. So there's like an average of about a point and a quarter in games against Everton. And Frank Lampard's managerial record against Newcastle, he's managed 3 games, he's won 2 and he's lost 1 against Newcastle.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, stats relatively balanced with regards to Everton and Newcastle. So, as always, it could go either way. And I think we've mentioned it before, that there's an opportunity there for Lampard to get his sort of managerial bounce and for there to be a reaction. But as well as that, we also could have our bounce in terms of getting our new five signings firstly in the team and playing, the excitement about Bruno Guimaraes, and you also have like Matty Targett, Dan Burn, all of these players to come in. That could give us a lift. We're at home at St James's Park, as Chris said at the start of the show, under the lights. Is that going to be the one to kind of really kick us forward? But just to have a little bit of Newcastle chat for a second, there's a question I put on there from Colin that I think you starred, Chris, and it says, do we expect all 5 to start? That's a really, really interesting question. I'll come to you with that, Chris. Do we expect all 5 of our new signings to be in the team on Tuesday evening?
I mean, Kieran Trippier is definitely going to start. I think that goes without saying. I would expect Matty Targett to start, especially given that Jamal Lewis has been left out the 25-man squad. So I expect Matty Targett to come in. Dan Burn, again, I would imagine he'll be in there. Chris Wood will start. Yeah, I think potentially, all 5 could. The only one who may not start is Bruno Guimaraes, and that's only because What am I right in saying he only landed in Newcastle on Saturday? So
Yeah, it was the fourth. Yeah,
Friday.
yeah.
fourth.
Oh,
on
was
a
it Friday?
Yeah.
Was it
But
Friday?
we can't
Right.
lose these extra days. These extra
I
days
know,
mean
I know.
that he could be playing.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I want Bruno to start, but that Bruno would be the only one that I could see who may not start. And don't forget, the other four are all Premier League experienced. So with Bruno, they might decide to bring him on as sub. I don't know. I hope he starts because obviously I want to see him live. But yeah, I think Bruno might be on the bench.
Well, what are your thoughts, Keith? Do you think all five will start, or do you think, as Chris has said, and it's a more than valid point that Bruno Guimaraes may start on the bench?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, an interesting question, and a point that Chris has made there. All four of the five are Premier League experienced, and I think that's quite crucial. Trippier, yes. I don't know what the update is lately about Chris Wood, but obviously there was the concern about COVID while he was away at New Zealand. And, I think Dan Burn, steal up that defence. I can see that happening. Certainly in Target as well. I quite like the sounds of Guimaraes as well. The travelling, what's he like? Coming over from, being away where he is, coming over Brazil, coming over to the UK. Will there be some jet lag there and getting used to it? He might be on the bench for me in that game and come on a bit later on. And if he comes off the bench, can you imagine St. James's? I don't know, maybe 75 minutes in or 70 minutes in, he comes up, that scoreboard comes on, and the ovation, it might give the crowd a lift to the players again, and he comes off the bench. So if I was going to make a prediction for that, I would certainly say about 3 to 4 will be in the first team, and Guimaraes coming off the bench.
Interesting. And even more interesting, the comment here by Tom Dixon, drop Shelvey. I'm surprised by that, and I don't know what your opinions on Shelvey. I think has been one of our best performers since Eddie Howe came in. He obviously scored the winning goal at Ellen Road against Leeds. I'd be shocked if he was dropped.
It's like a player reborn.
Yeah, he really has been. And the one thing about Shelvey is, and I think we talked about this on the deadline day, is that for any of you that knows about Bruno Guimaraes loves a link player in midfield. So Max Coqueret at Lyon is a player that he linked really well with in that centre midfield role. But then in the attacking midfield role, he had Lucas Paqueta, who's his really good Brazilian friend. And the three of them in midfield really linked well. They're all good and comfortable on the ball. That's the key. He likes playing with players that are comfortable on the ball, short, sharp passes, small, tight spaces to unlock the game. If he's playing with somebody, he has to be playing with Jonjo Shelvey, because the one thing you can say about Jonjo Shelvey is that he knows how to find a pass. He knows how to make a pass. He can play quick passing football. And with those two together, I think there'd be a really, really good link. So, yeah, an interesting one there from Tom Dixon, about dropping Shelvey. I think Eddie Howard loves him, and I think he's going to play every minute if fit, in my personal opinion. But just from Mike's point of view, do you think that do you think that all five will start for us, or Newcastle players? And just a little bit on Bruno Guimaraes. Do you know much about him? Have you saw his talents before he signed for Newcastle?
No, not particularly. No. I think like Chris was saying, if anyone's not going to start, it'd be him. You look at the other four lads have got Premier League experience. Chris Wood always causes problems, to be honest with you. I hate playing against him. It's just one of those players. There's always certain players from each side that I hate playing against. He's one. Fraser's another one. Fraser's always causes problems and shouldn't do, but does. But maybe that's just Everton being terrored by so many different footballers from so many different teams over the years. Dan Burns about 7'3", isn't he? So he's another one who's.
Well, just about to say, like the last time we played against you guys at Goodison, he scored for Brighton. He scored that header at the back post. So from his Newcastle point of view, I kept that in my mind because I thought big Dan Burn debut at St James's Park. He's already scored against Everton this season. Could he grab another potentially? But you've mentioned a few players there that like to play against Everton.
Yeah, we're just a very accommodating side. So if a player hasn't scored for about 12 months, then he will. I'm sure Chris Woods will get his first goal for yourselves as well. That's nailed on. It's just whether Everton can score more than you on the day. But it's going to be an interesting game. It really is. Both sides have got to win the game, and that makes all the ingredients are there to be a end-to-end match. And hopefully our significant quality will shine through in the end. But listen, who knows? That's me just being overconfident because we won our first game in about 3 years yesterday. So I'm getting carried away with myself already.
Hey, we're with you with that one because we've only won 2 games all season, so we know how it feels, right? We know how it feels, but from a Newcastle perspective, from our point of view, we've got an opportunity to do something we haven't done for a long while, and that's win back to back matches. And there's a great opportunity for us to do so. But yeah, really interesting that. Right, we'll. I want to ask you, Mike, and I think it was said in the chat before, but is there, are there any sort of, or should I say, who are the players for you that you're really worried about come Tuesday night that you think are really going to cause Newcastle some problems? Everton going to cause Everton some problems for you guys during the match?
Yeah, it's got to be Sam Maximan. I've said it before. The quality that he's got. Things that he does. Sometimes you wonder what are you doing that for, and I think he overcomplicates things at times. And I think that he's been talked about coming to Everton at one point, and he's one of those players who would just frustrate the life out of you. But he's got it all in his locker. When it comes off, it's fantastic to watch. He can beat anyone on any given day. So he'll cause us problems because of his pace, because of his quick feet, the size of the pitch. It's a decent size, St James's Park. So when he's running downhill on that slope, I wouldn't like to be facing him as a defender, that's for sure. So he will cause us problems. I said then, the big lads. I mean, we struggled massively from defending set pieces. We were much better yesterday because I think Paul Clements has got a hold of them over the course of the week, and they've been working on it, and he's great at that kind of thing because Benitez was absolutely horrific at organising from set pieces. So it does concern me, like you said. Dan Burn scored at Goodison Park. He was left unmarked. The tallest fella within about a 5 mile radius of Goodison Park was just left to wander in and at the ball, the back of the net. So I think we're better than that now. I think it's only been a short time under Lampard, but he's certainly been working on it, which is important. Yerry Mina will start. So he's the biggest player we've got. Michael Keane. If CalvertLewin's fit to start, which I don't think he will be, he's another decent sized player. But it's going to be difficult. I think set pieces has been our Achilles heel for quite a while. And with the size of the Newcastle team, I think he can cause us a few issues there. But the main man's got to be Sam Maximan for me.
Yeah, definitely. He seems like he's picking up. He had a good game against Everton, against Leeds. Get my teams wrong today. You can tell I've had a week off. I'm all over the shop. But he had a good game against Leeds at Ellen Road. Although he didn't score or assist as such, he really should have had a couple of assists. The way he put them on a plate for, I think one was for Fraser and the other one was for Willock. But Alan Maximan, he finally looks like, certainly in the last couple of games, he's starting to fit into Eddie Howe's tactical system, which is what there was a question mark before. And he's, the one thing I'll say is Alan St Maximin thrives playing at St James's Park under the lights. So, you mentioned about Seamus Coleman playing at right back, and that would be an interesting matchup because when Alan St Maximin's on form, there's not many players that can stop him playing. So that would definitely be one to look at. But from the boys' point of view, Chris, Keith, who are the players that you guys are worried about? From an Everton perspective, that could potentially hurt us on Tuesday night. We'll start with you, Chris.
I suppose the two I'm probably most worried about, thinking that who will start, it's probably Damari Gray and Richarlison. They're probably the two that I'm most worried about. I'm a really, really big fan of Damari Gray, and I still can't believe Everton got him for like 1.7 million. I just think it was a
Crazy.
great bit of business, to bring him in. I think he's a real live wire. I liked him at Leicester, and then obviously he made a move, didn't he? I think it was to Leverkusen, and I was surprised at the time because they didn't pay much for him. So whether there was personal issues going on, I don't know. But yeah, when they brought him in, I was a big fan of that move. And Richarlison, he's always a threat. I think he's a good player. So probably them two. But also if Dele Alli starts tomorrow, after what we've been saying about him, that will concern me as well. Just in case he really turns up and gets up for the occasion. Because I think it will be a really good match on Tuesday night, and obviously it's Frank Lampard's first Premier League game. So the Everton players and the fans, I'm sure, will be bang up for it.
Definitely. And Keith, who are the players that you're most kind of concerned about from an Everton perspective?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Chris there with Damari Gray and Richarlison. He's always a player I look out for, certainly Richarlison. And he was back in it yesterday, wasn't he? Back in the goals, and it always seems to chip in whether rain or shine for Everton. And the other one for me, Townsend, Andros Townsend, a player I've always rated. And the short spell he was at Newcastle, I absolutely loved it. I thought he always a scorer of fantastic goals. Townsend, and back in amongst it again yesterday, and amongst the goals in Everton's superb win yesterday in the FA Cup.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting one in here that I'd forgotten about, and I'm not sure why. Tom Dixon said, will Rondon play on Tuesday evening? Obviously, I'd forgotten that Rondon even played for Everton. It was a big thing at the time when Everton signed him, because we would have loved him back at Newcastle after his loan spell. He had a great season for us. I think he scored 12 goals in that season. It was very, very good. Then he went with Benitez over to China. But yeah, just quickly, Mike, your thoughts on Rondon? Do you think he'll play? I don't think he played on Saturday, or I might be completely wrong with that.
He didn't play. He wasn't in the squad on Saturday. When he played Tuesday, hopefully not. Do you want to buy him back outside the window?
You really not a fan then, no?
You know what? In all honesty, he gets a lot of stick and what have you from Everton fans, and it wasn't a great signing. It was a signing based on convenience for the manager because he worked with him before. Obviously, yourselves. He worked pretty well at Newcastle. And he was brought in to be a bit part player, to be a squad player, to come in, give CalvertLewin a rest, 10 or 15 minutes each game, throw him on, and see games out. And that was the idea. Unfortunately, Dominic gets injured at the back end of August. We don't see him for 4 months. Rondon's then getting more and more game time. He was nowhere near fit. He's probably just about got fit. You'd probably say now it's taken a long time for him. He scored a hat-trick in the international break, which is great for him. It's good that he got on the score sheet. But he's for me, it's just not good enough. Unfortunately, he's just not good enough for Everton. And a few years ago at Newcastle, great, absolutely fine. But the deal was only done, as I say, we were short of money. He wanted to bring a striker in to take a little bit of pressure off Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And Benitez obviously had worked with him, he had history, so he brought him in. But when you've gone over to play your football in China and then you're bringing someone back to the Premier League, is it really going to work? It was a silly move. I understood the move. It wasn't great. I feel for him a little bit because of the fact he's been thrown in. But there's certainly not much favour amongst Everton fans for Salomon Rondon, unfortunately.
No, it does seem like he's kind of gone backwards since he come back to England. He doesn't look the same player. He doesn't seem like he's performing at the same level. He just doesn't look like a Premier League player now. I think that what always tends to happen if you go somewhere like China to play football, it's of a significantly lesser quality standard, and it does take it out of you. So when you come back to a league like the Premier League, you're not able to do the same at all. So really, really interesting one. But good question that. And I think the last question before we sign off. There was one in there, Chris, I think from our about our good friend that plays in goal for Everton. That's
Yes.
from just down the road.
What's your
So,
thoughts, Mike? This is from Tom Dixon. What's your thoughts on Pickford and Rondon? Well, I know you've just touched on Rondon, but certainly Pickford.
He's matured for me. He totally, understandable. You go back to the times he played against Newcastle and he's pulling tongues at the fans and stuff like that, and getting carried away like an idiot, and that was silly, And for him it's emotional because he gets so much stick because of his history as a Sunderland player and a Sunderland fan. We know he had a bit of a short fuse, but the last sort of 12, 18 months, Jordan Pickford has really settled down and got back to doing what he does best, and that's been a top class goalkeeper. He's never going to be great at catching the ball from crosses. He's not commanding. He's not big enough to be that goalkeeper, but as a shot stopper, I think he's very good. And he's had his head screwed on. I think he's seen a sports psychologist, if I'm not mistaken. He spent a lot of time working with them. So he knew he had a problem that he had to address. We also brought in Alan Kelly as goalkeeper coach, who's still there now. He's being kept on under Frank Lampard, who's a very important part of Jordan Pickford's team, if you like, and he knows him. He's known him for many, many years, and he's got his head screwed on now. You've seen off the field antics when he's having fights in pubs and stuff like that. It's silly stuff. People get under his skin, or had done quite easily. The antics against Newcastle over the years have been a little bit silly. It's all well and good if you win the game, but when you lose the game, you look daft. But I think he's learned. He's a different kind of player. Whether a white hot atmosphere and a night game at St James's Park can draw out the old Jordan Pickford, that remains to be seen. But I'd like to think that he's moved on from that now, and he will just sort of focus on the game itself and try and just block out the crowd around him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry, Pete. I was just going to say we've got two more dead quick questions, Mike. So I'm just going to quickly ask you them before I pass you back to Pete. We had a question from Julie Baker. Has it come off? What were your thoughts on Sean Longstaff being linked to Everton, Mike?
I would have sold him straight back. Let's got to be honest. Listen, Again, it's the manager, isn't it? It's just all on the manager. I just never. Well, I understood it, but what was that about? So it's just absolutely crazy. He should be nowhere near. He should be nowhere near your side. And this is no offense to him. I just don't think he kicked on. And you'll know better than I do. He hasn't kicked on from when he was young, when he burst onto the scene, and he was doing well. A bit like Tom Davies for us, really, where he burst onto the scene, and you think he's gonna be a world beater, this kid, and he hasn't. And I think sometimes the pressure of being a young local player can really impact players, and they go one way or they go the other. And I think unfortunately Tom Davies is another example of that. He's gone the other way, and Longstaff has probably regressed. So yeah, that link never went down well. And I know from people that I know inside the club, that deal was done. That deal was happening. And if the manager hadn't been removed, he was coming to Everton. So I was delighted that he didn't come. I'm delighted that he's still with you. Hopefully he plays on Tuesday.
Mike, I'm sorry, go on, Pete.
I was going to say now Mike said that we need Bruno Guimaraes to start on Tuesday. There's no question.
It's okay. Longstaff will score if he plays. Don't worry about it. That's how it goes.
So we've got the last question here, Mike, from Martin Lesbit, and it's an interesting question. I know you probably don't know the exact answer, but it'd be interesting to hear your opinion. So Duncan Ferguson has been on the back room now for a lot of years, but never been given the job long term. Why do you think that is?
He's wanted it. He was interviewed when Benitez got the job, and he wanted the job. I know he said in previous years that he doesn't think he was ready when he got it before Carlo came in. He didn't think he was ready for the job, and that was absolutely fine. But he certainly wants the Everton job, make no mistake about it. And he was not happy that he was overlooked or snubbed, should we say, in terms of the recent managerial appointments. And I was very, very surprised he stayed. very surprised he stayed, because a lot of talk on the, I think the day before Lampard was announced that Big Dunk was off. So I think he'd had enough. I know Carlo Ancelotti wants him over in Spain at Real Madrid as a coach. He wanted them last summer. He wants him to go over there with him. So I was very, very surprised. He didn't think, right, okay, I'll go. And he lived in Spain a number of years ago, Big Dunk. So I'm very surprised that he didn't take that opportunity. I think he just loves the club. I think that he'd never take the job. It was going to be to the detriment of the club, that's for sure. But he thinks he's got something to offer. So I just think that he wants the job at some point in his career, and he still thinks that he can do a good job as a coach as well. But also, I think part of it is that he might have the back of his mind, well, if this is all I'm meant to be, but I can work at Everton, then I'll take it. Maybe he just wants to be a coach. Maybe that's in the back of his mind, and he's got it. You know, he's got a really, really important job for him, and that's staying at Everton Football Club. But I don't know. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him go and manage somewhere. I really would, and show the board for future reference. This is what I can do. I'll go and learn me to you. That's what you're looking for. If that's what's holding me back from the board's point of view, then I'll go and do it, and I'll show you what I can do, and I'll come back in 2 or 3 years maybe. But he loves the club. It's as simple as that. Obviously he went to Newcastle. You know what kind of character Big Dunk is, and you know, he's definitely mellowed over the years. That's for sure. He's gone from obviously punching burglars to just being a much calmer man. But he's a cracking fella. Absolutely cracking fella. Got all the time in the world for Big Dunk, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. And look, we're short on time, and the reason why we're short on time is because we are just switching straight over to our 8 p.m. loaded mag. So we're going to wrap up from there, but just a real quick round of what you think the score is going to be by, let's say, 10 o'clock on Tuesday night. So we'll start with you, Chris.
I'm going to say 2-0 Newcastle.
Oh, going for the big win. Mike, what you thinking?
Richie's been on, by the way, Chris. I won't give you the exact word.
He messaged me before, and I haven't read it though.
Yeah, you best not. To be fair, wait till you're off air later on. So I won't repeat what he said, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 Everton win.
Oh, okay, tight game. And Keith, what are you thinking for the result?
The last time Everton won away, I know they won in against Arsenal, but the last time they won away this season was 2-0 at Brighton, and that was Bank Holiday weekend in August. But even despite that, I think Everton produced a superb performance yesterday, I have to say, you know, in the FA Cup. And I'm going to keep going. I'd love Newcastle to win 2-1, like a repeat from last year, but I can see that happening, but I'm going to keep going against Newcastle, and I want them to keep proving us wrong. I'm going to go tomorrow because of the Lampard bounce. I'm going to go 1-1 draw, quarter two.
Interesting. I'm going to I think it's going to be a game with a number of goals. So I'm going to say, I think Mad Marks got my prediction spot on. I think it's going to be 3-2 Newcastle. I think there'll be goals in the game. And I think it'll be an entertaining one for both sets of fans. But yeah, I think we'll just have enough to win the game on Tuesday and take us closer to safety. But look, we'll wrap it up there because as I've said, the content doesn't stop with away days. We're on Loaded Mag in just a second. So as we finish away day, switch over to Loaded Mag, and we will continue the talk and building to a massive game on Tuesday. And just while you're there, for any new viewers to the show tonight, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. We're on the way to 3,000. We hit the 2,500 mark on transfer deadline day. So massive support and thanks to everyone. And if you want to become a member, you can become a member here by just clicking this button. So lots and lots of support from the guys and the lasses in the chat, and keep following us because we don't stop. But massive thanks to Mike for sharing your time this evening. Really appreciate your thoughts on Everton and Newcastle, and of course Keith with his stats. Always a pleasure for you joining the team to give your opinions. And Mike, best of luck for the rest of the season after Tuesday night, where we hope that you'll be walking away with the defeat. But yeah, I'm sure that Lampard will do the business after Tuesday and take you guys up the league.
Appreciate it. Cheers, lads. Really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully you do stay up. But as I say, I don't think Tuesday will be the start of any Newcastle change of form, to be honest. But we'll see.
Definitely. But no, right, everyone, you take care. If you haven't already, switch yourselves over to Loaded Mag, where we will be in just a few short moments. But for all of you guys, take care. Away Days will be back next week, previewing the Villa game with a familiar face. So until then, take care and speak to you very soon. And we always enjoy playing away.